Hey there, this is Mr. Icarus, and welcome to yet another edition of Doom Mod Madness. This time round, we are checking out something a little familiar. This is a sub-mod of Brutal Doom by the name of Ali Jr.'s Challenge, and what this mod does is present you with a collection of 10 custom levels and a few gameplay tweaks that are intended to make Brutal Doom even more brutal. And no, I am not talking about the violence, because how do you even add to that? It's already as gore-soaked as you need it to be. No, the brutality here is in reference to the difficulty. So what kind of tweaks can you come to expect from Ali Jr.'s Challenge? Well, for starters, enemies here are significantly quicker than they were before, and this also translates into how fast that they can attack. The soldiers in particular are just abject bullshit with the rate of fire once they actually start pumping those bullets out. Not to mention the also hit scan, which is just, you know, my favorite thing in the world when it comes to enemies like that. It basically turns nearly every base soldier into a goddamn chain gunner right from the word go. Spectres in Ali Jr.'s Challenge seem to have been raised on a steady diet of cocaine-infused invisibility orbs, making them tremendously difficult to hit, what with that zigzagging motion as they run towards you, and making it so that the only real effective range in terms of dealing with them with a weapon such as the shotgun is when they're pretty much point-blank trying to chew your face off. Good luck dealing with that when there's multiple spectres bum-rushing you through an open door, as is often the case here in Ali Jr.'s Challenge. Imps also have a few tweaks here in regards to how they operate. The primary projectile attack now scorches the ground as it moves across it, and if you stray into the flame of this scorched ground, you will also suffer additional damage, meaning you've got to be a little careful with your footwork when it comes to dancing circles around these enemies that just continuously spawn in at the start of this level. You've also got a short-range flame burst attack that comes from imps as well, which means you're going to have to be a little cautious about getting up close and personal with them. They're not just going to ineffectually scrape at your face, they may just unleash a big old fireball that'll singe off your eyebrows. But crucially, the one thing I hoped would be included with the imp behaviors here in Ali Jr.'s Challenge isn't, and that is the ability for imps to crawl on the ceiling, which I really enjoyed from the likes of Project Brutality. Turns them into somewhat of an ambush predator of a demon, but that's missing here, which is just a little bit of a shame. All things considered, the first few maps of Ali Jr.'s Challenge are relatively simple, straightforward, and actually quite manageable once you get into the rhythm of it. And then there's map 4. Let's try and quantify this, shall we? Let's try and take stock of why the opening of this map is just complete bullshit. So, you come out from a bottleneck into a wide open area which has no less than 4 chain gunners in the immediate vicinity. As soon as you stop firing your gun, all of those enemies will pivot 180 in your general direction and just lay it on thick. And all of this happens so quickly that you really don't have much time to register the geography of the damn location, so you just end up repeating this cycle maybe 3 or 4 times before you try and get creative. In my regard, getting creative involved trying to sneak up on them. It was a bold gambit, one that admittedly failed miserably, but did still grant me a few extra seconds of life compared to previous attempts. But crucially, this allowed me to spend a little time actually surveying the geography of the level and figuring out something I could take advantage of. Specifically, this little section here, where I could weather the storm of all of the bullets and bullshit headed in my general direction, and figure out the best course of action to get me through it. Inexorably, this led me to the only tactic that's left when dealt with insurmountable odds such as this, and that is cheesing it. I feel like I'll have to define that term for those of you out there that are unfamiliar with it. In my terminology, cheesing it is when you're backed into a corner with very little hope of being able to just blast your way out of it. So instead, you have to hole up into the most advantageous position you can and quite literally take pot shots at the enemy, whittling them down slowly but surely until they're in a more manageable quantity. That's pretty much what I'm doing here with the sniper rifle. It's actually working out quite well for me, but, oh, jeez, it's not a tactic that I enjoy. You know what the real hell of it all is? a lot of this unnecessary struggle could have been avoided, but it took me up until map 6, and after a fair bit of struggling through map 6, to discover that this mod does actually include an item shop. I had seen reference to it on the ModDB page. I thought it was maybe something physical in the level that you interact with every now and again, but no. It's actually a set of keys that are unbound in this mod that you have to go and bind yourself before you can actually use the item shop. It doesn't prompt you to do this, you have to go digging. So yeah, that was a bit annoying, but on the other hand, it worked out in my favor, because up until this point, all I've been doing is hoarding coins. So now I get to spend it on shitloads of ammunition for something like, say, a chain gun. The money doesn't last forever, however, and you will eventually fall down into a situation of having to pick and choose what items you lean on from the store, but even then, the store is something that feels very much like a crutch to make up for the lack of balance when it comes to the encounter design here. I mean, I get it. It's supposed to be difficult. It's supposed to be a quote-unquote challenge, but I think me and Ali Jr. have very different ideas on what a challenge is supposed to look like. Certainly doesn't look like a room full of bullshit, I can tell you that one for free. Not to say that every single room in Ali Jr.'s challenge is chock full of bullshit. Some of them are only partially full of bullshit, but, you know, they contain bullshit all the same. I guess what I'm trying to say here, if more attention was paid to the encounter design, how the enemies work within certain environments, if you play to the strength of the enemies and how you expect the player to deal with them, you can design some real interesting encounters. This is not interesting. This is irritating. This is something that requires luck, that requires replaying the same room over and over until you get lucky, you get the power-up you need, and then you can turn around and hold down the fire button until everything's dead. This does not fill me with satisfaction when I am done. I do not feel like I have conquered something, I just feel like I've endured something. I mean, it can't be that bad if I got through all of the levels here. There must have been something keeping me going, and if I'm going to be honest, I think it was just the brutal Doom aspect of it. The gore, the guts, the mayhem, the sound of the guns firing. That was probably the one element that was really carrying me through. So I gotta wonder, without the brutal Doom element, would I have given up on this? If I was just trying to deal with this with standard vanilla weapons, without the benefit of all the ketchup lining the walls and the floors, would I still stick with the levels and the encounters in Ali Jr.'s challenge? I don't think I would, but that's just me. This isn't the kind of mod that I usually go for. This kind of attrition-style design that just really does require you to fail several times over before you can even get a bead on what is going on in the next room. It's just not for me. But hey, it's gonna be for someone. That much is true. I mean, someone suggested this to me. They enjoyed this. I'm not judging. I'm not judging at all. But yeah, when it comes down to things I could easily see being improved here, tighter level design, certainly tighter and more balanced encounter design with regards to the enemies and their placement and their usage rather than just a corridor full of shit you've got to mow down. Certain bits of the maps could be revised, such as this section here where I got stuck underneath a ceiling that's intended to block off your retreat but doesn't actually kill the player, so if you get stuck underneath it, you are stuck. You gotta no-clip your way out of there if you want to continue with the level. I would really heavily recommend disabling the screen shake for when the player gets shot, because when you factor in the advanced fire rate of some of the soldier enemies, it makes it really, really difficult and quite straining on the eyes to actually aim at anything. Doubly so if you're trying to do ADS. But if there's a positive aspect I could certainly mention about Ali Jr.'s challenge, it's that the levels here are mercifully swift. They don't drag their feet, they don't go on longer than necessary, and they get straight down into the action ASAP. As for the quality of the action, your mileage may vary. As for things that I'm cautiously optimistic about, I like the idea of the shop. I like the idea of collecting credits from downed enemies and being able to resupply yourself through that method, but I'd also like to see the inclusion of maybe some unique items that you can only acquire from the item shop, how that would affect the gameplay, how that would change certain encounters. It's certainly something to look forward to, and this is only a mod in its 0.7 form. This is not a full release version, this is not final. There's certainly a ways to go, and you know what? I'm happy to come back and check this out when it's version 1. See what's changed, see what's potentially improved, and see if it evolves into something that's more my style. But in the meantime, if you enjoy the sensation of getting kicked repeatedly in the testicles, Lord knows there's enough of you out there that enjoy playing Hideous Destructor, burn, then you might enjoy this. Links in the description for all those interested. While I'm at it, I'd like to give a great big thank you to my wonderful patrons over on Patreon. Thank you so very much for supporting the channel and for helping to make content like this possible. If you're interested in lending a hand, maybe you'd like to see your name in the credits, maybe you'd like to gain access to early editions of my videos before anyone else, well, if that's the case, you can find the link to my Patreon page also in the description below. Hopefully you've enjoyed this video. Feel free to let me know what you thought in the comments, and feel free to suggest any mods you'd like to see me cover in future editions of Doom Mod Madness. This has been Mr. Icarus, firing his chain gun furiously. Icarus out.